Hey guys, Sean C. Phillips here with my October 15th DVD update. We're talking about all the DVDs and Blu-rays I've gotten over the last 2 weeks or so. Like I always say, guys, enjoy these update videos. Definitely give this video a thumbs up. Leave me comments below, guys, thought of titles I checked out this update. Any titles coming up that you guys would like me to review for future updates, and some of the things you guys have picked up recently. Now, the first one I got from Shout Factory Scream Factory line is the brand new collector's edition of Child's Play. This is one of those movies I love. I've watched this movie so many times. And this has, brand new commissioned artwork for this release. Really cool artwork on this one. Really love when they have new artwork done for their releases. But if you guys don't know, the Child's Play film, it spawned a whole series of films, and and they even made like all kinds of like knockoff films that were kind of copying Child's Play, like Dolly Dearest, and there's a couple other ones, and there was like Pinocchio, and a lot of things are like that same kind of thing, because when this was popular, then they made all these kind of like knockoff versions of this. But this is of course the best one. I actually like all the sequels as well. I think my favorite though probably is definitely the first one and the second one. And the last one, the most recent, was actually really pretty cool as well. But if you guys don't know the films, it's basically about this serial killer, Charles Lee Ray, who ends up getting chased to a toy shop when he's, the police are after him. He ends up getting shot and he's dying in the toy shop. And there's all these good guy dolls in the store, because that's like the big thing at the time, kind of like Cabbage Patch Kids. And he ends up basically possessing one of the dolls in there and transferring his soul into the doll. And he ends up transferring his soul into the doll, and then the store ends up catching fire, and there's the young kid in this movie, Andy, really wants one of these good guy dolls. It's the big thing, and his mom's having a hard time getting this doll, and she eventually finds in the alley there's this homeless person who's selling the doll. Of course, that's the doll that they got from the burnt down building that Charles Lee Ray possessed, and she ends up taking the doll home and giving it to Andy, and of course the doll is possessed, and then bad things start to happen, and the doll ends up killing the nanny, and then the police start looking at Andy like he's doing it, because they see little footprints and they're thinking like, is he doing this? Is this possible for this kid to have done this? And murders and things like that start to happen, and Chucky has his plan and what he wants to do with the boy, like his reasoning. But if you haven't seen the movie, though, I don't want to ruin it. But like I said, I always absolutely love these movies. It has on here, though, a brand new 2K scan of the film, a new commentary track with director, and then the classic commentary track with Catherine Hicks and Alex Vincent. And then it has brand new behind-the-scenes footage with a special effects artist on this one. So a pretty long thing on here. And then Howard Berger talking about, the effects in this. And then behind the scenes with Ed Gale, who played Chucky in a number of the scenes when they weren't using the animatronic, Chucky scenes. But, and then it has some of the classic features as well from the past releases. But really, I would highly recommend you guys check this one out if you guys haven't seen this one. And it's definitely worth an upgrade. The picture on this one is really good. Like I said, it's a brand new 2K scan of the film. The next one, this is one I had not seen in a really long time. This is the collector's edition of, The Exorcist 3, which is one, like I said, I had not seen in a very long time. And, and it has brand new artwork on this one as well, which is really cool artwork on this one as well. And this is one of those ones, too, that always really creeped me out as a kid. I remember, I used to tape things off the TV when I was a kid, and I remember, the stairs in this. So, there's a scene of, a priest falling down these steps, and, I always remember that scene, and, every time I see, really steep steps and stuff like that, I always think of this movie. Till this day, I always think of stairs like that, and so I'm almost scared of really steep steps because of this movie. But this is basically, though, about there's killings going on and desecration of things in the church, and there's priests and things like that are being killed, and it's basically, George C. Scott's character, who's this, investigator, who's trying to figure out exactly who is doing this. And it's looking like a killer that actually had been killed years before. And they're trying to figure out exactly how are these killings so similar to this killer that was in the past. And he's trying to get to the bottom of this. And it deals with, really creepy religious imagery and some really creepy segments, and him going to this asylum. And Brad Dourif is in this movie, too. Brad Dourif is in, Child's Play as well. But Brad Dourif is really cool in this movie. Just some very creepy all-around atmospheric movie. Very cool one. And has on here too a new 2K scan of the theatrical cut, and then it has on here a director's cut, which is pretty cool. They ended up putting together their director's cut that was the intended cut the director always wanted, and they built it out of outtake footage and about some VHS quality. So basically they kind of compiled it from anything they could find to make the most complete version of the movie as they could. And I believe it's I can't remember how much longer. I think it's I don't know how much longer the director's cut one is. I know it's quite a couple minutes longer though, but it has on here though a number of other interviews on here as well. It has an interview with Brad Dourif, interview with the production designer, music for Pat Cell, interview with the composer, and then a look at the additional shoot and special effects on this one. But definitely a cool release of this. Like I said, really cool to have the director's cut on here. The next one is one that I really wanted to see. It kind of reminded me of that movie Viral a little bit. It's a movie called What We Become, What We Become, and it's basically though about it's like there's some kind of something going on, this kind of virus in this town, and they kind of start to, it's about this kid and living with his parents, and across the street his neighbor, this girl moves in that he starts to like, and there's like a virus going on, and people are getting very, very sick, and they're throwing up everywhere, and they're telling like it's going around everywhere. Everyone is getting sick everywhere, and they basically go and like quarantine this entire neighborhood, and the government is basically bringing in food to them, and it gets worse and worse because they go and like lock them in, and they make them like tent the houses off and all this kind of stuff. And it's about this kind of family that's dealing with this whole thing going on about this new life of having to be stuck inside the house the whole time. And of course the guy likes the girl that lives next door, and he wants to try and get over there and see her, and they're trying to figure out too if there's a way that they can get away from all of this, and also at the same time hoping that they don't end up getting sick with what's going on, because it's a very creepy what's happening to these people, like this virus, and you're trying to figure out exactly what is going on to them, and if they're dying, or if they're what exactly is happening here to them. But really cool one. I think it was from, I can't remember where this was. I think it's a Danish film. Yeah, it was in Danish, but it was actually a really, really cool one. Like I said, it kind of had that vibe of that movie Viral that came out like a year or so ago. I think, no, it came out recently on DVD, but I think it's like a year or so old. The next one here, and this is one that I was so excited about, from this line. It's from Lionsgate. It's a new line that they're releasing, classic titles from the Western video line. And this is the collector's edition that has Waxwork and Waxwork 2, Lost in Time. Now, too, people who are wondering in here, the movies are on, it has like the artwork for the first one, and then if you open it up inside, you can take this out, and then it has the artwork for the second movie. But it's on, separate discs. So those who are wondering, each movie is on its own disc. And it has a documentary on here too. It's a very extensive documentary that talks about both of the films. It has Zach Galligan, the director, and a couple of the other cast members and some of the producers and the effects people and all that kind of stuff talking about the movie. I think it was like an hour and something long, and it has on here though it has a vintage featurette on here as well, and the director, commentary on both films with Zach Galligan and the director. So that's pretty cool that they, they're really, really going all out with their releases, with the features on these. And coming up, they're going to be having Chud, Bud, Chud 2, and then Return of the Dead 3, which I can't wait, to see that one, because it's going to finally be the uncut edition and on Blu-ray. But if you guys don't know the movies, I can't talk too much about the second movie because it kind of like continues on with the first movie. But the movie is basically though about this weird wax museum in this mansion type building in the middle of like Hollywood type area, and it's basically Zach Galligan and his friends, and they get invited to go to this wax museum because the guy out front is like, would you like to come to my wax museum at Waxwork at night? And they're all like, okay, and they all end up going to this place, and there's all these dioramas of like all kinds of events from the past, and like Jack the Ripper, and like Knights of the Round Table, all these kind of like events in the past. And they basically end up, going into this building. And what happens is the characters, like one by one, end up wandering their way into the dioramas, and they end up getting like stuck in there. One of them is like a werewolf scene, and the one guy like ends up getting attacked by the werewolf. And what it basically is going on is the Waxwork, like the wax, exhibits have like missing people from them. And once people go into them, and if they die in the exhibit, they end up becoming part of the Waxwork. And they're trying to collect souls for the exhibits. And two of the friends end up getting missing in there, and Zach Galligan and the girl that he likes end up, leaving the place because they don't know where the friends went. And the guy's like, oh yeah, they left, they went their own way. Of course they didn't, and they were, trapped trapped inside the Waxwork and died in there, and they end up going back in there, and it's kind of what ends up happening. Very cool, and it's also the uncut edition of the first movie, so it's super, super gory. Like, I did not remember how gory this movie was until I saw it, and like, there was one scene too, without ruining it, with like this leg, is definitely one of the like top gross scenes I think I can ever recall seeing, with this leg. And it's like, oof. If you guys have seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about with that leg scene. But this is such a cool movie. I had not seen this movie in so long. You know, it only ever was released in the past in full screen editions from Artiston years ago. So finally, they're both in widescreen. And the first movie, like I said, is the uncut edition of it as well. Like I said, though, can't wait for the other releases from Western Video, and also can't wait to see any other titles that they're going to announce, because I definitely hope they continue on with this line. The next one, though, from Lionsgate as well, is a movie that I hadn't heard too much about, with Jackie Chan and Johnny Knoxville, called Skiptrace. And it's a pretty fun movie. It's kind of like a little bit like the vibe of like, you know, Rush Hour, I would say, that kind of vibe. And it's also just more like Jackie Chan's kind of comedic films that he did. They were kind of like, sort of like slapsticky type scenes to them, and kind of like over the top essence things to them. And it's basically Jackie Chan is a cop, and his partner was recently killed, and he was killed by this drug dealer, and he never was really able to, you know, find the evidence to really bring this guy down. And Johnny Knoxville is this kind of gambler that goes around and kind of schemes, and he's scheming ways to get money, and scheming people out of, you know, money and all kinds of stuff. And he's at this casino, and he ends up witnessing this girl get murdered. And basically the people who, you know, saw that he saw this end up becoming after him. And Jackie Chan is kind of, I mean, Johnny Knoxville's character is kind of on the run from this. And Jackie Chan's character needs to find Johnny Knoxville's character, because he's wanted by this group of people as well. And Jackie Chan is trying to bring down this group of people. So it's kind of like the whole thing of them together and having to try and get back to a certain type of a destination. And they have all kinds of, they're kind of trouble along the way with each other, and they don't like each other. Like I said, it definitely has that kind of Rush Hour kind of vibe to them, about them kind of arguing back and forth. It kind of reminded me too of the movie Bulletproof, a little bit, like just kind of like the bantering between the characters. That's the funnest aspect of this movie. And then they just run into all kinds of problems along the way with their travel, and they're like getting the places where they're trying to get to, and then also dealing with the people trying to come after them as well. But it has on here, though, a feature on here, When Jackie Met Johnny, and a director's commentary track on this one. This one from Lionsgate as well. I really love this one. Like, I really like Woody Allen movies, and this one, to me, was like one of my favorite ones in a long time. I've liked all of them. I like Magic in the Moonlight. I feel like I've watched pretty much all the Woody Allen movies in the last, like, at least, like, 10, 15 years. Like, it's pretty much every single one of them. And this movie is called Cafe Society, and this has a great cast in this. Steve Carell, Jesse Eisenberg, Blake Lively, Kristen Stewart. And it's, like I said, it's Cafe Society, and it's basically about Jesse Eisenberg's character, who goes to work for his you know, for his uncle, who's, you know, played by Steve Carell, and he kind of is like an entertainment kind of guy, and he does all stuff in the entertainment business, and like managing people and all that kind of stuff. And he ends up, you know, working on sets and all that stuff, and he ends up going there to work for his uncle, and his uncle, like, reluctantly hires him on to work for him, and he ends up starting to kind of like Kristen Stewart, who works with his uncle as well, and he starts to have a relationship with her. Of course, though, the problem here is Kristen Stewart is on the side, seeing Steve Carell, and they're, like, talking to each other about, like, this great girl that they're seeing, and then, of course, they're talking about the same girl, and they don't even know this, and it becomes, you know, it's kind of what ends up happening because of this. And it was all set, I think it was set in, like, the 30s, I think. I'm pretty sure. But I don't know. I just absolutely love this one. If you know Woody Allen's movies, you know the kind of neurotic aspects that go on about, you know, Jesse Eisenberg. Like, every kind of, like, the male stars always kind of play Woody Allen in a way with, like, the neurotic aspects to them. And Jesse Eisenberg is extremely neurotic about this relationship, and about, you know, the whole thing going on, and he's always, and they're kind of both screwing things up for each other in some ways as well. But I really like this one a lot. Like I said, I like these kind of movies. I thought this was actually really well done. Personally, this is one of my favorite ones I've seen of his in a long time. Like, 'cause I've liked all of them, but this one stands out to me like the most. I don't know. I just, after I watched this, I was like, I really like this movie. But it has on here, though, a featurette on here on the red carpet, and a photo gallery for this one. The next one is one of the ones that I would definitely give one of my top recommendations in this update. I really like this movie. I love these kind of movies that are set like at the end of the world, and, you know, when things are kind of going bad. And I really like Ellen Page and Evan Rachel Wood. Like, I feel like I've watched pretty much all their movies. And this movie is called Into the Forest, and this is basically It's kind of set in the future a little bit. They don't exactly say, as far as I can remember, exactly what year this was, because they had like futuristic TV, so I feel like it's supposed to be like a couple years, 10 years or so into the future. And it's basically, though, Reverend Evan Rachel Wood and, Ellen Page, who play these sisters who live out in the middle of the woods with their father. They're kind of in a small town area where they have to kind of drive like 20 minutes to get into town, and he's out there trying to fix up this new kind of like cabin type place that they have up there. It's a pretty nice house. They're all kind of trying to work on it, and that's kind of his thing. And what ends up happening is there's a massive blackout in the whole world. All the power goes out, and they're kind of up there in the middle of nowhere, so they're kind of not really knowing what's going on up there. So they're kind of up there and not knowing what's happening. They have this little radio, and Evan Rachel Wood's character is starting to be a dancer, so she's still kind of like, well, I can practice dancing more. Ellen Page is kind of studying for these tests, for the SATs, but the thing is too, like, it's a movie too where they're all kind of like relied so much on technology, and now they have to deal with the act of not having technology anymore to actually rely on. So they have to actually use books and things like that and deal with this new world they have of no power, and they don't know when this power is going to go back on. But what ends up happening though is something happens to the father, and these girls are basically left on their own up there to try and survive, and they have no clue of when this power is going to come back on. But it was the cinematography in this was amazing. The whole overall vibe to this movie was so good. I don't know, I really got into this movie. Like, it's one of those movies, like, I don't know, certain movies you feel like you could watch forever, like a really long time of just what's going on with these girls and having to deal with this whole thing. And this one, I really liked this one a lot. I thought they both did a really good job in this movie dealing with this situation of what is happening up there. But I would definitely recommend you guys check this one out. Really love this one. And the next one from Lionsgate as well is a movie called Our Kind of Traitor, which is one that I was really interested in seeing. It has Ewan McGregor in this, and, Stellan Skarsgård, and Naomi Harris, and Damon Lewis. Naomi Harris, I always remember her from 28 Days Later. This is the first movie I remember seeing her in a while. I know she's been in a lot of stuff, but like one that I can recall. And the movie, though, is basically, it's a kind of about, Naomi Harris's character and Ewan McGregor, who are on a trip, and I think they were in Russia on this trip, and they meet this one guy who is like, kind of like starts talking to them and says, oh, you should come over to my house, and I'm having this party. And of course, though, he has a reason he wants Ewan McGregor's character to come over to the house. He's a part of the Russian mob, and he's the guy who kind of like fixes their books and does stuff for them. And he's like, with his family out there, and he's like, listen, I'm desperate to get out of this. I need to find a way out. I can't leave. They're going to kill me. And he gives them this flash drive to give to the the police. I think it was like, what, I don't know if you call them, but like the police in the UK, I think that's what it was. The police, they used to give him this flash drive. Of course, though, he ends up finding himself, like, because he's done this, like, he ends up being wanted, and the people that are like the Russian mob are kind of coming after him, and it becomes a huge nightmare of a situation about him and his wife and dealing with what's happening, and, because he thought he was doing the right thing, and maybe he wasn't, and maybe there's more to this whole story, than what you thought was going on. But I like these kind of like real thriller type films. Has on here, though, deleted scenes, three behind-the-scenes featurettes, making of, cast interviews, and the story of the film. The next one here is the brand new release, and I believe there's a 4K release of this one as well, of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. This one, I had not watched this one in a very long time. I remember this one was up for a number of Academy Award nominations. This is also one of those first movies, too, that I remember that really, like, was like the start of, like, amazing wire work in movies, because, like, Ang Lee directed this movie, who directed one movie that I absolutely love, Ice Storm, but he also did Brokeback Mountain, and he's a new one coming out too that looks really cool. But it's basically, though, one of the first movies that really used, high-tech wire work. Like the fighting scenes in this were amazing. There's stuff of them like, up on branches, fighting on branches, and they basically erased all the wire work in the post. But these amazing sequences, and all has to deal with this sword it was stolen away from this, who's the master of the sword, and him trying to get it back, and also deals with a love story in here as well. But this is just such a cool movie, amazing cinematography, just a really, really cool one. Like I said, the first of, like, at least taking to an American audience of seeing this kind of wire work. And then they made like or Kung Fu Hustle was kind of a spoof a little bit of this with like the crazy wire work as well. But it has on here though a bunch of new features: 6 never before seen deleted scenes, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon retrospective with Ang Lee, the making of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, a music video and a theatrical trailer on here. Also has the commentary track from the past release. But like I said though, this is the brand new edition of this one, and I believe there's a 4K release of this one as well. The next one, I saw this in theaters as well, and I didn't love the first film as that much. I thought it was okay. This one though, I really liked this one. I actually like teared up a bit to this, and I liked that it really followed like Johnny Depp's character for the most part, and it showed him like as a kid and how he kind of became the Mad Hatter and got crazy and everything, because you know the Mad Hatter is the real crazy character. Like to me, that's always the greatest character in the Alice in Wonderland stories, and you know, and all of them. And I always liked Alice in Wonderland the story. I always remember even watching as a kid Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which hopefully someday that gets a DVD release. That was always such a fun show. Like when you're looking back on it now, it's like it wasn't like, it was kind of cheesy and everything, but as a kid I love that. This movie though is Alice Through the Looking Glass. This one has you know the DVD, the Blu-ray, the DVD, and the digital HD copy of this one. Now this is basically though, you know, Alice is now kind of not getting married anymore, and she's kind of looked at as kind of crazy because she walked away from this wedding when she was going to get married, and she's kind of being put into the nut house, and they're saying it's, you know, the asylum, because they're saying that she's crazy because of this and just the way she's acting, and the family is looking down on her just because of how she is and not getting married. And she ends up going back to Wonderland, and she gets there, and something has happened, and the Mad Hatter has become like extremely depressed, and she has to try and figure out how to save him, because he's going to die if he can't cheer himself up. And it's like he's like the guy who cheers up everything in Wonderland. So she ends up having to go to the past and try and fix something that happened to his parents, the Mad Hatter's parents, in the past. And it's kind of her going through this whole thing. The aspect too I really liked was Sacha Baron Cohen's character, who's like the timekeeper in this, and he was really cool in this. And like he's kind of coming after her because she's breaking time, and she ended up having to sneak through time to go back and do this. But I love this movie. I really like this one. I think you guys should definitely check this one out. Like I said, I like this a lot more than the last one. The last one, like I said, was fine. I liked it a lot as well, but this one I really, really loved. Has on here, though, behind the scenes of The Looking Glass. It has a thing on here on the costumes on here. Look at the characters. And it also has a thing here, too, and they're showing, like, the scenes before they're finished, like the early forms and then through the effects stages of it, as well as an audio commentary and deleted scenes on this one. Now, this one, I would say I became obsessed with having to finish this. Like, there's very few shows, you know, where I go, I have to watch every single episode of this one. And this one, I did. It's only 8 episodes. I believe it was 8 episodes long. It's a mini-series one. Yeah, it was 8 episodes. So it was a limited series, but I watched through every single one. I think like 2 days. This one is, you know, from HBO, and this is called The Night Of. And you know, if you guys haven't seen this one, this is one of those ones you have got to watch no matter what. Like, I love this one so much. Highly recommend this so much. This was absolutely amazing. Like, and I'm not saying that. I mean, I absolutely became obsessed with watching this and having to finish this and seeing what happened. And it's, you know, it's basically though about this kid in the beginning of the movie. He's like a real straight-laced kid who's doing very good in school and is all about his studies and never really goes out and drinks. And he's a Muslim as well, so he doesn't drink or any of that. But he ends up taking his you know, father's cab out. He takes it without permission out at night, and he's, you know, because he wants to get to this big party with his friends. And you know, he ends up taking the cab out, and when he's having a hard time turning off the light on the cab that says, you know, it's not in service, because people keep trying to hail the cab, and he's getting really crazy. He's like, oh, they keep on trying to get in this cab, and he can't turn off the light. And when he's sitting there trying to do this, this girl ends up getting in the back of the cab, and she's like, oh, can you take me somewhere? And he's like, oh, but he likes this girl, so he's like, okay. And she's like, something is the matter. She's like, I can't be alone tonight. Just take me somewhere. And he's like, where do you want to go? They go to the beach. They go to like the water area. They start talking, and then they end up, you know, kind of hanging out, and he goes back to her place, and they end up sleeping together. And they kind of run into all these problems that happen because he makes some bad decisions, because he does drugs for the first time out there, and he's playing like that game when you know, take a knife and stab it to try and miss your fingers, and he ends up stabbing his hand. But what ends up happening though is after he sleeps with this girl, he wakes up blacked out downstairs, goes upstairs, and the girl is dead. And he ends up making these really bad decisions of leaving the scene. He knows he didn't do it, or he doesn't think he did it. He doesn't know. He can't remember. And he ends up leaving the scene, and his evidence is all over the place because he ended up cutting his hand playing that Russian roulette type game, and there's blood everywhere, and he ends up leaving and stealing the knife, so he makes all these terrible decisions and ends up basically arrested. And the show is pretty much about John Turturro, he comes on as his lawyer, and he's was amazing in this, and kind of everyone trying to figure out exactly what happened, even though everyone's looking at him as pretty much guilty because of all this evidence, and people are kind of passing prejudice on him as well. So it deals with all these aspects and deals with the whole thing of him going to jail and him in the system and him dealing with the courts and him dealing. It goes through all the aspects, and it was one of these kind of shows that was so well done and so realistic on the way everything was carried and done in this. But like I said, guys, I love this movie so much. Highly recommend you guys check this out. I feel like this is one of those things you guys are going to watch, and you're going to have, with me, you're just going to have to finish the whole thing, and that's what it was. I was like, I have got to finish this. The next one here from Warner Brothers, this is an Warner Archive release. This is Body Snatchers, The Evasion Continues. This is one I had not seen in so many years. I love this artwork on this one. But this is basically, though, set on a military base with a girl who goes to the military base with her father, and she's out there, and her father and mother, and I think it was her brother, and they go there, and there's some weird stuff going on. If you guys know the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you know that there's these pods that are kind of taking over people when they're sleeping, and then the real person ends up dying, and then the clone takes over. And this is going on this military base, and she's there, kind of figuring out something is happening here. Meg Tilly plays the mother, and this Jennifer Tilly's sister, and she was in one of the Psycho remakes and a bunch of other movies. But she's steals the show in this movie. She's got this one line in this, which is amazing, when she's like, "Where are you gonna go? Where are you going to hide? Because there's nobody else like you out there." I don't know. It's the way she said it was this amazing, amazing line. I don't know. I love this movie. Like I said, I had not seen this in such a long time. Forrest Whitaker's in this movie. R.E. Emery is in this movie. I always think of him from Full Metal Jacket, and Willard is the mean boss and the drill instructor in Full Metal Jacket. But really good transfer in this one. Like I said, it's a Warner Archive release, and I feel like this is the one that kind of went under the radar of all the Body Snatchers types films. The next one, and this is there's only one more season left, and then all the seasons are out of this, which is great. I'm glad these are all coming out. This is from Warner Archive as well. This is one of my favorite shows. This is one of those ones too that I can always go back and watch, and I feel like out of all the types of shows like this, to me it holds up the most because it was always my favorite. I love Full House, but this one I always liked more for some reason. This is just always one of my ultimate childhood shows. Always love this. Later seasons always did have some kind of odd aspects because Jaleel White didn't really want to play Urkel all the time, so he kind of played other characters like Stefan, and then he played his cousin Myrtle and all this kind of stuff going on. But this one deals with them taking a trip to Paris and all these different things, and the Urkel robot. A lot of really great episodes in this one. This is Family Matters, the complete 8th season, and like I said, there's only one more season of this to come out, which is great. Like I said, I'm so glad these are all coming out, and all the discs too, for those wondering, are press discs. They're not burnt discs of this. So if you guys are a fan of the show, definitely pick this one up so that hopefully this next season comes out as well. I'm pretty sure it will, but I'm really glad though that Warner Archive does this stuff so you can get these releases. You know what I mean? So they do them in a small batch like this, or burn on demand. The next one here from Blue Underground is a Lucio Fulci movie I had never seen before. Somehow I totally missed this movie, and it's called Manhattan Baby, and has on here the soundtrack as well as a DVD. It has an interview too here with the composer, a long overview of the composer. I love the composer. Is amazing. His music, he did music in Zombie and tons of different films, and a number of other featurettes as well. 25 Years with Fulci, with the makeup artist. Interview with the co-writer of this one. But this is basically though about a family that goes to Egypt, and the father's out there kind of doing something for his work. He does explorations of tombs and things like that, and what's cool is they actually filmed this in Egypt and filmed it at the pyramids and a lot of the scenes. And you don't see too many movies, especially now at all, filmed in Egypt at the pyramids. And there was some amazing stuff of these pyramids. But they basically go there, and the one daughter is along, and the father goes in this tomb, and if something ends up happening, and he gets shot by these lasers beams at his eyes, and something has happened, he's become blind, and they're trying to figure out if he's ever going to get his sight back. And then the young daughter there, this weird kind of ghost woman gives her this medallion to her, And then, you know, this medallion, there's some kind of a curse and there's something bad going on with that. So she ends up getting the medallion, goes back to New York, and then weird things start to happen, you know, with dealing with like ghostly stuff and strange stuff start to happen in the house. Really cool music in this one as well. It kind of reminded me like of sort of like a Exorcist kind of poltergeist kind of vibe going on movie. You know, like I said, it's not the all-time greatest of all the Fulci movies, but it's definitely more of an atmospheric, not like a super gory kind of one with like some of his other ones. More of an atmosphere vibe to them is on this one. But like I said, though, it has on here the CD as well in here, which is always cool when they include the soundtrack as well for the movie. The next one, this is like a real Mystery Science Theater type movie. And I don't think Mystery Science Theater ever did this movie, but such a cheesy, fun, weird movie with Jack Palance in this one playing the bad guy. And he always is amazing. Always was amazing. I loved him in, you know, City Slickers and then like the couple horror movies that he did, like Alone in the Dark and stuff. He always played it so over the top and crazy. This is, you know, H.G. Wells' The Shape of Things to Come. This is like in the future, everyone is living on the moon because the world has become not inhabitable anymore. And there's all these weird like robot characters and you know, Jack Palance's character kind of wants to take over the world and destroy the moon, and he's trying to steal these things with this, and then it's kind of these people trying to go after him with this robot and try and stop him. It's just like a really, really super cheesy space film. Around the time they were making like Jason of Star Command, those kind of shows, it feels more like a TV show in a weird way, some of the ways that it was shot. It's like I said, super cheesy, but super fun, ridiculous movie. And has on here, though, an interview with the star, Nicholas Campbell, and another interview in here with the composer of this one. But great transfer this one. If you guys are a fan of this movie, definitely check this one out. The next one here from Paramount is one called Be Somebody, and I actually like this one. It's kind of a guy who's, I looked him up. I thought I knew him from something, and he's a YouTuber. And I don't know if he does music or not, but I know he does. I think he does vlogs and stuff. And it's Matthew Espinosa, you know. And it's like I said, this movie's called Be Somebody. And the guy is kind of like a Justin Bieber kind of guy, and he's like really popular, and he's kind of selling out all these tours. And he's a 17-year-old kid, and he's kind of dealing with all of that, and dealing with the fact that he is super famous and really doesn't have a life outside of going around and touring and things like that. And one night when he goes, you know, he's on the tour bus, and the mom stops to get some food in this place. He goes for a walk, and they end up not noticing that he's not in the back of the tour bus, so he ends up getting lost out there, you know, in the street, and he doesn't know how he's going to get back. And he ends up meeting this girl out there because like all these fans see him on the street and start chasing him, and he meets this girl. And it's kind of about him on this one day when he meets this girl and kind of having the ability, like a day of being like a normal kid and going out and like hanging out with her, and just kind of like he starts to like this girl, but she's kind of like looking at him like, oh, you're going to forget about me, and you know, you're super famous, and who am I? I just like this girl who works at a pizza place and stuff like that. I don't know. I actually like this one. Like I thought it was actually pretty. I always like these kind of movies, and it was like a kind of a super positive type movie. Has on here, though, behind the scenes and a gag reel on this one. The next one, this is a remake, and I was trying to remember if I ever saw the original one. And then I was like, I think I did, but I don't think I own it. But it's a movie called Vampires, Lust for Blood. You know, Lust is the tagline, but it's Vampires. And it's basically, though, about these two vampire women that live in this kind of castle out in the middle of the woods, kind of castle-y, kind of weird house in the middle of the woods, and they go there and kind of lure like men and women back there and drink their blood and sleep with them and things like that. It was cool to see like a movie like this now, because they haven't, like I said, it's a remake of a movie in the 70s, and they don't make these kind of movies at all anymore. So it was a real throwback, and had a lot of character actors from like Italian films and stuff like that from the past in this now, so it was pretty cool. It is in English as well. I think the original was in English, or it was dubbed in English, as far as I can remember. But though it's basically though about this couple that's camping out in the woods, and also like this older guy, and the one woman ends up starting to kind of like this older guy, and she's drinking his blood and everything, but she's not killing him. And it becomes this weird thing about the other one is like, why aren't you killing him? Why are you dragging this thing out? And for some reasons, there's something about this guy that she likes, and you know, it may end up being not a good thing that she goes on with this. I don't know. I thought this was a super cool movie, really cool music. Like I said, just a total throwback. Artsploitation films, to be honest, they're really putting out some really cool stuff. Like Der Bunker was like one of my favorite things in a long time, because it was so strange. Like they're really putting out some cool stuff, like really cool, you know, foreign films and stuff like that I feel like wouldn't come out here in the US or otherwise. Like it would be really underlooked. The next one here, and this is a release from that Subculture, Yeah, Subculture Entertainment. And this is Mille the Stone Woman. Now this is a region-free release. It's in Dutch though in the writing here though, or Dutch or German. I always mix it up. But it's like, you know, this is Mille the Stone Woman, and this has on here 3 different cuts of the movie on here, so that's pretty cool. It has the international cut, I think the French cut, and the Italian cut, but I watched the international one. This is one too that I thought I hadn't saw, but then I was like, I think I saw this before, because I was remembering some of the sequences in this, because it was like this writer that goes to this place where there's this weird guy, this professor kind of guy who does experiments like that, and he's got this weird type carousel thing where like they have these exhibits go by of like women and stuff like that go by on this track, this really cool weird thing, and he kind of shows it to people, and he's kind of popular for this thing, and people are kind of turning into like stone or women like around the area and stuff like that. It's kind of a the wax museum type film about weird things that are going on in this place, and him trying to figure the whole thing out. And he also starts to like the guy's daughter. It was a very creepy, atmospheric movie. Really, really great transfer in this one. Like I said, it's Mille the Stone Woman. And the next one here is a documentary. It's kind of a documentary. It goes to all these type of areas in India, like the forest, and then looking for like the tall rhino, and looking for India's only ape. So it's like a bunch of different areas in India, like the whole culture, and kind of exploring it. And the one person that goes on this too is the actor from Slumdog Millionaire. They kind of go around, and this is called India, Nature's Wonder, and this is from PBS. They kind of go around and look at all the sites and the kind of areas in India. I always like these kind of documentaries that show all these kind of areas. These are always like fun to watch and just to see all these different places. And the last one here from PBS as well is a documentary called Norman Lear, Just Another Version of You. And Norman Lear is the guy who was the producer, and he wrote a lot of the episodes as well of TV shows like All in the Family, the Jeffersons, Maude, Good Times, and he was kind of like groundbreaking shows at the time too, with the subject and the kind of what the whole content of the shows, and also were hugely watched shows and kind of changing the face of TV. And it's kind of the documentary talking to him about his career, and then talking to people who, you know, some of the actors who were in the shows, about the experiences and all that kind of stuff about doing these. And I don't know, I thought, you know, if you guys are a fan of like the All in the Family and these type of shows and classic 70s TV, I would definitely check this one out. Like a really well done documentary. Has a number of different featurettes on here as well. It also talks about Mary Hartman, but definitely check this one out, guys, if you guys are a fan of these. Anyway though, guys, that's all for the reviews in this update video. Thanks again for watching and subscribing. I'll see you guys later. Bye.